I have to say that's the two cutest individuals to ever join our meeting, right behind you. They look very serious. I can't hear you.
Very well behaved.
They are adorable and they look like they're really paying attention.
They are.
What are their names?
Grace and Finn. Finn, this is a photo.
Oh, is it?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. I was like, I
Yes.
wonder why they're like not even moving.
Yes. It's
They're
my
beautiful.
background. Grace is 5 and Finn passed last year.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Gorgeous.
How are you this evening?
I'm very good. I have my two dogs near me and they're not as well behaved. I have two boxers and
Oh, great. I had a boxer.
they're wonderful, aren't they?
They are.
One is a little out of control and one is very well behaved. Should be any minute now, and they'll be joining us.
Okay.
I am muted. I don't know if that was on purpose.
Hi, Lisa. I muted it just because we're just gonna wait one more minute for Rennie.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Oh, okay. Great. Oh, that's funny. We never have that. Yeah, so that's great. Oh, okay.
This is the owl. I sometimes like to do manual. Because then, it doesn't move around.
Yeah. I like that too. Yeah, thank you.
Property and land and said that the surveyor, the email. Is it her?
I haven't heard a word for. Well, we said to come to the meeting, meet her, and,
Yeah, I know.
we said, okay.
He ain't returning my calls. I don't know what he.
Oh, he sent me a special note, I'll tell you.
This message, I understand if you're in rehab, it's not a big deal.
It's just like a preliminary.
I said, if you could remember, only when you talk to when you're drunk. Do you remember that?
Okay.
But he I drove to his house once, and I was gonna leave him in his truck. He's got somebody watching his house. He didn't come out. He texted Jody. I'll get it.
So, the dress. For like. So I called the meeting.
She's gonna watch.
They got that.
Yeah. She said.
And where they cater that fire.
So it has almost.
But I can order it online. And
The wife, the son of it, they're helping out at the firehouse. Rings are shaded.
I said, yes.
And then they got the restaurant. And then who knows who's gonna call the center? It was a fundraiser for Ireland Association. They kind of said it says something like that. That's what it's.
Good. John, this morning about that car,
Yeah.
we're gonna get that taken care of.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Oh, well. 3 years, a long time. I think.
Yes.
Yes.
Gosh.
Sorry, I'm late. Like, Keith Davis.
My man.
I know.
I am Rita. Good evening. It's Wednesday, November 15th at 6:37, and I'm calling this Laws and Rules meeting to order. My name is Alderwoman Michelle Hirsch. I am filling in for Alderwoman Chair Rita Worthington. Present is Alderman Rennie Scott Childress, Alderwoman Naima Mohammed, Alderman Drew Andrews, Alderwoman Sarah Pasty, and Alderman Bob Dennison. So the first thing that we have on the agenda tonight is an easement request from Tracy Kellogg, attorney.
Actually, really, formally from John Brennan.
Okay.
Either one, we're both
Great.
together.
You're all together?
We're all together.
Great, okay.
So if you want. we
Yeah,
can lay on that.
yeah, whatever. Yeah. Please sign here.
So, in essence, what has happened is that there was at the corner of Delaware and Fourth Street, there are two lots, the Howards and the Yonta and the Sasso's lot, which it appears based on some old maps that the city has are over, their construction is over onto the city property. So it was found when there was an application for a lot line revision, the surveyor surveyed that area. So we're here asking whether the city would be willing to grant an easement to those two properties so that their homes are protected and covered, and also are clear for title and sales.
Okay.
And or if the city would be willing to, of course, transfer the property, because it doesn't appear that it's not impinging on anything related to the city, hopefully water, sewer, sidewalk. And from my perspective, I think, it's less liability if you just were willing to transfer
Mhm.
because of the amount of area that's.
The other point is, John Greco, by the way, my clients are here, Linda Sasso and Tom Yonta, they own this parcel that has the apparent encroachment onto Delaware Avenue as shown on the old city map. As you can see, though, the existing traveled way of Delaware Avenue on Court Street is not encroached upon by the Yonta property or the Johnson property. How the history of this in terms of how Delaware Avenue ended up here, and Court's here, as opposed to the engineering map that Mr. Winnie discovered that went back to 1867. He found an 1867 map in the city engineer's office showing the bounds of Delaware Avenue to be as highlighted here as opposed to where it's actually constructed.
We don't know whether
as
this
shown on
road
the map.
moved at some point. Or, I mean, the house has been constructed there since the 20s or 30s.
It was built in 1880 and my grandparents purchased it in 1920. And my family's lived there since.
Yeah, and this wasn't a recent addition or anything like that. It's been there and doesn't interfere with Delaware or courts. We don't see that the city has any use for this area, but obviously it would be up to you and the common council.
So the yellow area would be the area that the Yonta and Sasso property. And the orange would be the Howards.
Yeah, Johnson.
Oh, sorry.
Howard.
This is
I
the
see.
line. This is the Johnson, Scottsville Court, and perhaps
I was like.
the existing bounds of the courts of Delaware. So it does.
Yes.
It goes right to, the porch.
I just.
And if something were to happen, then your property would be reduced.
Right.
And part of the reason I'm saying even from the perspective of, transferring the title rather than an easement, is that I'm town attorney in Marbletown, and we have this issue where the post office in the town, and then the question becomes, whose fault? Whose life? Right? So,
No.
The interesting thing too is this came in front of the planning board in the city because there had to be a lot line adjustment between Johnson and Sasso and Johnson. The planning board approved it, but the encroachment with Delaware Avenue was not addressed. Sort of kicked the can down the road, I guess.
so,
And here we are.
so we're looking for your approval, I guess, to
Okay.
pass it out to the company.
Yeah, so I think that what we have to do at this point is send it on to the engineer and corporation counsel to get the exact language and what it is.
Yes.
Right,
Yeah.
no, I mean, we're not.
Yeah,
I think Park Council's aware of this, isn't
Right.
it?
yeah, she
Yeah,
usually
that's what
she's
we
here,
started.
but she's not here tonight, unfortunately.
Yes,
but
that
yeah.
was where we started the process.
Yeah, so, I don't believe that there'd be any issues coming out of this committee. I don't even think that we need to vote. We can just refer it, to that.
It seems like a very reasonable
Yeah.
request.
And I guess the question becomes if it's an easement or does the city prefer to abandon title to that?
Right, and that's a whole other process, so
It is,
yeah,
yes.
so then that would be a different step that we would have to take as a body, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, and then, or the question is whether we do it in 2 steps,
Mhm.
because one, there's a sale that's pending that is being delayed because of this.
And the easement would permit the sale to go through.
Right, the easement would, right, the easement
Mm-hmm.
permits
So
the
the other
sale.
issue could be determined
Right,
later. Okay,
Yes.
okay.
All right.
and the same language for for the area. Okay.
Well, thank you all for coming, and I'm sorry we don't have snacks.
You want to, you want a full size, you like a full size copy of the survey?
Yeah, it's been.
Just a year.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and if they want to.
Oh, you got 2, we'll take them.
Yeah.
There's a hole in the wall in the other conference room.
You want one that's marked, or I would assume.
Whatever you can.
Thank you.
You don't want to know what person.
Yeah. I'm gonna go ahead.
And just
I get
another
it.
question, not,
Yeah, I
knowing
get
how
it.
the process works, you would ask corporate.
Yeah, we'll just refer it, and, yeah.
Any idea of what the timing is for the process?
We'll follow up tomorrow, and someone will reach out to myself or their office.
Thank you.
Do you mind if you step out since our portions?
Oh, yeah.
Here, I'll leave you.
Depends on what it means. Oh, thank you.
Since you have no popcorn. I'm just saying.
Run my-
Fails to serve this.
Cocktails.
You all are welcome anytime, so.
We are working on the next year's budget.
Thank you very much.
Is there-
Thank you.
Yeah, I get him.
All right.
Thank you.
So next on our agenda. No, it's Ward 8. Yeah, I mean, that would have to go through the whole, then we have to get an assessment and, and a hearing. Yeah. Okay, so then second, let me just give them.
Does anybody have a rubber band?
No, she can remember. A request to amend the code regarding immobilization of vehicles.
Hey, then.
That's what he uses to immobilize vehicles. So we have Vince Perry from our parking department. So why don't you come on up? And I don't know if you've met all of our new council members.
No.
I don't think we're allowed to close
Nice
it.
to meet you.
Yeah.
We've met.
We have met.
We're like family. Nice to meet you.
I mean, it's a, you give tickets.
I don't know that. I don't have any information on that. But what, John asked me to come speak to you guys about was, law 390-80, vehicle mobilization. The way the law, is currently read, the summonses that are unpaid stay with the car. So if I sell you a car with neglecting to pay, the parking tickets on it, we come along, VIN number pops off. Boot gets put on the car. We've had instances where people get held up. We can't remove the boot until they, show date of sale, document things along those lines. And while those fines could be waived, their time, we can't give them their time back. So what we're looking to do is to change it to the registrant, which I had the corporation council add the language in section A. And we have the software, like we can update it at no cost. Basically, you have people that are out in the field, their handheld tells them, hey, this is a bootable car. The system, when they call Relay to check on it, says, yeah, this car is bootable because of the way our law is constructed. So if we change the law, we can change the filters in the system to reflect now it goes from owner of the vehicle rather than the vehicle itself.
That makes a lot of sense. Didn't realize we didn't go off of the license plate.
Yeah.
All right, so, let's see, I don't have a committee report, so I just need to, a resolution to amend city code 390-80. There wasn't. Oh, here it is on the other side, those double-sided. Okay, I got it now. It was on the other side, but I didn't expect it, okay. Okay, as per attached. Okay, so, can I have a motion? Any other questions? All right.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yes, okay. Can I have a motion for discussion?
Second.
Discussion?
Strange to see Vinny after dark.
Yeah.
Are you gonna give any tickets out to us?
Actually, no.
Okay. All right, so call for a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Okay, passes 5.
It seems like a leadership change.
It's very relieving that it went, so smoothly.
Only going to effect.
That's up to.
Yeah, we have to pass it at the council and then the mayor will sign. Like probably a day or two within sign it. Okay,
We're all set?
yeah.
Yep.
Thank you guys so much. It was a pleasure to come, the esteemed colleagues of the Calvert Council.
Thank you for
Well,
all
thank you
your
for
hard
doing all the research.
No, absolutely. Emily, you're a doll. Thank you.
Okay, next, third item on the agenda, we have a resolution from Mayor Noble about our Ukrainian sister city. Hello.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Alderwoman Hirsch. I'm excited to be able to present tonight with also a colleague. Tim Distel is here with us on Zoom. And so a few months ago, Tim came to my office to talk about some of the work that he's been doing to help support the Ukrainian people. And over the last year he's worked to be able to put together some efforts to be able to get really critical supplies from the United States and here in New York State and from our own local community to Ukraine to help with their efforts. And as a part of our dialogue, one of the things that we discussed was the ability to create relationships with a city in Ukraine, to be able to both have a supportive relationship with a sister city, to be able to learn about how their city government operates and some of the work that they're doing in Ukraine, and how we also may have some common challenges that we all face as cities. So a few weeks ago, we were able to get a notification from Ukraine that a city in, I believe, and Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it's in the kind of maybe with the southern part of Ukraine, I think, when you look at it on a map. And the city of Sokriana, and again, Tim can correct me if that is not said correctly, but they are a city of just over 8,000 people, and they would like to be our sister city. And so they sent us a draft resolution that their Common Council and their government has made an interest in signing, and they would like us to sign as well. And so I wanted to present that to you all tonight and to ask for your permission and approval to create that relationship with our sister city in Ukraine. And so I don't know, Tim, I think if you want to pop on Zoom or say anything, you can feel free to do so to the Common Council. I don't know if I got everything.
Yeah, I'd be happy to answer any questions, and I can give a brief overview of kind of the origins of this. My name is Tim Distel. I'm a lifetime resident. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Yep.
Okay, great. I'm a lifetime resident of Ulster County. And when the war in Ukraine began, I chose to stay and help out, and came back after about 5 months to work on some things here, including connecting resources to Ukraine volunteers, as well as municipal officials and cities with potential counterparts in the U.S. So Sokriana is in the Chernivtsi Oblast, which is roughly southern Ukraine. It's if you're watching on CNN throughout this process, it's about a 5 or 6 hour drive from where CNN and whatnot film a lot of their presentations in Lviv. And I visited there about 2 times, once in the beginning of the war, and then recently, earlier this year, I brought supplies that are critically needed, things like tourniquets, medical kits, and so on. So in terms of this process, a sister city or a twin city is basically a non-binding memorializing resolution, but it helps create channels for those who want to help, puts schools in touch with each other for cultural or knowledge exchanges, pen pals, and it helps inspire hope during this time where, they're facing an incredible amount of stress. So I'd be happy to go over any specifics or any questions. I just don't want to take up too much of your time.
Tim, what was the process of making this the particular site?
Well, basically, one of the problems I came across is the amount of people who want to help but don't have the ability to do so, or don't know how to get started. I wanted to set up something that would help connect people from kind of our area to a counterpart over there. So this way, it's for logistics reasons, it's a little smoother process, and it makes it easier for people to engage if they choose to do so.
Right, but I mean, there's a lot of towns and cities in Ukraine. Why this particular one as opposed to, say, Lviv or something like that?
Well, some of them already have sister city partnerships, and there's quite a number that are interested in that. I was just down in DC to talk to Sister Cities International in order to help get some of those contacts that I have. More or less, it's I think really any city that you're going to come across is working really hard to deal with a very difficult situation. And in this particular case, they've been very proactive about trying to reach out and it's been a little bit difficult. I mean, one of the most common problems that we come across on both the US and Ukrainian side is the dreaded spam folder. So a lot of communications get missed because of coming from two different locations and, sharing of PDFs and whatnot. But they've been very proactive in terms of helping the community. They're also a great supply hub because they're on the Romanian border. So like Lviv, it's a place where if someone wanted to send supplies, it's much easier for them to get them safely and then distribute them to different areas of need.
Is this a city that's been seeing bombing, or what is the state of the actual physical state of the city?
This one in particular is pretty close to the Romanian border. So similar to Lviv, it doesn't get hit nearly as much. I mean, I think there was attempted attacks on the energy infrastructure there. But mainly it's avoided a lot of the devastation you've seen in places like Kharkiv or Chernihiv. But where they're very helpful is they've been able to help other cities with everything from sending electricians to help get the power back online, distribute supplies, things of that nature.
Thank you.
And then in doing this, is there, what are some of the established practices of sistering, if you will?
Yeah, so any city can do that. Sister Cities International is something where people can opt in if they want to formalize it or get assistance with creating a structure. But there's a few different areas that come up quite a bit. One of them is knowledge sharing, because a lot of infrastructure work has to be done. One city official that I talked to, not this one, but another city, had about 80 to 85% of their schools either destroyed or damaged from bombing campaigns. And so a lot of the infrastructure questions of how do we rebuild, how do we do it effectively? Sustainability is looking at alternative energy. So learning about how other cities in the US work on infrastructure was one, partnering school kids together, and certainly creating those channels of support. There was a firefighter in the Hudson Valley that very quickly got about 7,000 pounds of expired EMS gear. Things that are still usable, but for liability reasons, we cycled them out beyond their actual lifespan. And it took much longer to figure out how to actually get it there, which fire department, which shipping company. So the support was there, but the how to actually finalize it and get it in use was much more difficult.
Great. Sarah?
Oh, I just said, just a quick question. There's no financial obligation from the city of Kingston relative to supporting the sister city. This is more communication or a channel for resources that people in our city would like to voluntarily commit. Is that correct?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Unless the Common Council wants to send me to Ukraine, I mean, I'd be okay with that.
I was thinking the other way around.
I think Rudy should be the liaison to their council. So. Alderman.
So how do we communicate this connection to the schools and to young people if they want either pen pals or there are people who like to volunteer or donate?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few different ways. I mean, there's an active Ukrainian community in Ulster County. They recently had a fundraiser that had it was wildly successful, and people from Ellenville to Saugerties, Kingston. I mean, it was a lot of different people of diverse backgrounds there, and it was pretty nice to see that. So they would be able to provide some insights on their operations for aid work and be able to kind of make it easier for folks to help out if they so desire, and what are the current needs, because it changes very rapidly based on the situation. But in general, like, most of the common items, whether it's battery backups, tourniquets, but they would know more about what's needed at that moment or what area they're focusing on. The recent fundraiser was about helping orphanages for kids that lost their parents during the war, and they're working with a church in I think in the East. But in terms of communications with putting school administrations in touch with one another, and then they can figure out where what would be best, to focus on. Maybe it's a extracurricular activity or pen pals. I think putting those school administrators in touch would be a way where they can work on what would be optimal and for their needs.
What's the name of the organization again?
You're talking about the Ukrainian fundraiser?
Yeah.
And the Ukrainian charity?
Yep.
Yeah, it's SUM.
You must spell that?
It's spelled in Ukrainian. I think that's the official name, but they go under the Ukrainian American Youth Association. But it's the church in Kurhanson that they usually work out of. And I'd be happy to share the contact information with the leader of that organization.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions? Okay, call for a motion to discuss.
Motion.
Second?
Okay, any discussion?
When I'm impressed at how Tim can talk without moving with us. But yeah, I think it's a great idea. It is actually, from what I see on the map here, it's bordering Moldova. But that doesn't make a difference.
I think it's a great idea. I think a lot of kids are into supporting one another with the era of social media. And I used to do pen pals. It was a great experience. Yeah, there's people that want to help, but you're right. They don't know the channel or the how to get to the resource. So I think it's great.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, I like it a lot. I think it's educational, it's compassionate. It's a, really great opportunity for both sides. All right, anyone
It'll
else?
be easy to go when we do a field trip though.
So, okay. Well, I'd like to call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Well, thank you. He's gone. Oh, there it is. Tim, and thank you, Mayor Noble, for bringing this to us.
Yes, thank you all for your support. We really much appreciate it. Have a good rest of the night, okay?
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Thank you again.
Bye. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Tim. Bye.
3-hour trip from Budapest, 2 trains, 5 buses with walking in between some of those.
How many hours?
20 hours and 10 minutes. And it's 12 hours from Odessa.
All right, next up is on the agenda, item number 4, adoption of the Kingston Pedestrian and Bicycle Master Plan. I think we have Emily Flynn here to, and the mayor, or is he staying?
I can present on it.
Great, come on, yes.
And while I'm coming over, Elisa, may I share my screen? I think I need access to be able to do that.
Just 1 second.
Sure. And Chair, if you don't mind, I have about a 10-minute presentation. Is that all right?
Yes.
Okay, you're all set.
Thank you so much, Elisa. Give me 1 second. Try to share the correct screen. While that's queued up, there it is. I've printed out copies of the plan for you all. So you can take these over. And Bob, I know you want to take lead.
Thank you.
So, I'm going to jump into it. I know you all dig into the plan as you should, but I'm going to give you a little bit of a quick overview of what's in this plan. Okay. For anyone who doesn't know, I'm Emily Flynn. I'm the Director of Health and Wellness for the City of Kingston. And I'm here because I'm the project manager for the pedestrian master plan. And the reason that we've been working on the Westfield master plan. Oh, did I slide into this? Sorry. Would defeat my whole purpose if you're not able to see. There it is, okay. We created this, it's a planning document for the city of Kingston. It builds upon the master plan for the city of Kingston and the climate action plan. So this is another tool for the city of Kingston, and its overarching goal, the reason it's in my department, the Department of Health and Wellness, is part of my goals is to get people to walk and bike. We do this because it's healthier. It reduces traffic congestion, it reduces emissions, and it's fun. It's great for mental health and many other reasons. So that's why the Department of Mental Health, Health and Wellness is creating a plan here that will create, I hope, safer streetscapes for all users. And this plan specifically looks at walkers and bikers. Sometimes I refer to them as active transportation. There's lots of other goals here, as you'll see, but that's sort of the overarching goal. Just a quick note that about 15% of Kingston households do not have access to a private vehicle. So I see that the PED bike plan is also a bit of a social justice issue. I believe that all users in the city of Kingston should be able to travel safely. So I think it's important that we do that. Here are just 5 key takeaways. So if I was in an elevator with you right now, this is what I want you to go home with. I see planning documents as a way to create a shared vision for the city of Kingston. So I think that this is a direction that I hope that we will all choose to go in. This plan is a set of recommendations. It's not required steps that we take. As you'll see in it, there are some specific recommendations. Each potential project would have to be looked again by a traffic engineer. Very knowledgeable people came up with these recommendations, but they are recommendations. It's really an opportunity for us to assess our streetscapes in more finer detail of how to make them safer. This plan will help us be more successful with grant applications. As you probably, well, I'll get more into funding in a little bit. Another thing I just want to make a connection to as part of my other work is that we have the Live Well Kingston Health Commission, of which we have a travel well focus team. There's a lot there. I can come back and present to you about that whole world. But what I want to bring up tonight is that a lot of the items that are in this plan will help inform some of the work that Travel Well and Live Well will continue on for a long time. And then finally, my ask of you tonight is to consider formally adopting this plan. It just sort of sets in stone. This is the vision. This is the direction that we'd like to go in. And then again, we can reference it in grant applications that we all somewhat agree that that's the direction we want to go. I've been working on this project a long time, for years now. I'm really proud to be here in front of you tonight, and I'm really proud of this work. So I'm happy to share it with you. A whole group of people have been working on it. So Barton and LaJudas was our consultant. They are the experts in this field. And then we had a public advisory committee of different transportation users. The plan doesn't really have an executive summary. What I think is really unique about this plan is that in some ways it's a set of tools. And I'll go into that a little bit more in depth. But there's facility guidance and recommendations. So the infrastructure, the way that we design our streetscapes, there's some recommendations in here for that. There's suggestions about how to do outreach and education about transportation. And then very important, we can decide what we want to do to our streetscapes, but we have to figure out how to pay for it. And so there's some suggestions on funding. And then there's some immediate next steps that we can do. Just a little bit about the process. We took community input, we put that into sort of a snapshot of, I'll talk about what our existing conditions are. You have to know where you are before you decide what you want to improve. That became our needs and opportunities. The consultant knew the best practices and what's the national standards. They brought those into the alternatives. We put it back out to the community for input again. Then that became our recommendations. We did a lot of public outreach over the course of this project, 2 public meetings, a public website, surveys that were digital and in paper. The public meetings and the surveys were in Spanish and English. We did a crowdsourcing map to collect data on specific concerns from the community. We did tabling, I led walking tours. And then as a part of the project, we did a complete streets training as, in connection with the Complete Streets Advisory Council. So that brings me to sort of the inventory and analysis. So that's sort of the snapshot of where we're at in the city of Kingston for walking and biking. And I'm a lover of maps, and we have plenty of them in this document, as you'll see. They're all, I think, quite beautiful. They're quite attractive. We got lots of colors. These will be really great tools for the city as we do those grant applications, as we consider other projects down the road. We have some really, also what I really love that the consultants did is they sort of made them that I can separate them out in chapters. So if someone says, I really want to dig deeper into the railroad infrastructure, I have a map that I can give them. So these are some nice little one-pagers that can be used. There's a number of different ways that we looked at what the status of our roads are now. The first two are a level of service. This is a nationally used measure. We didn't decide how to measure these roads. It's a standard. So we did that for bicycle level and pedestrian level. You'll see there's different, what would you say, grades for those different streetscapes. That's because there's slightly different measurements. So for walking, biking, presence of street trees increases the grade, presence of width of sidewalk, that's kind of stuff, for example. So that was one way to collect information about what our streetscapes are like. Another way was we set up cameras at 5 locations. And it was mostly to see how pedestrians and cyclists are using this, the intersections. And you see this corner down here, there's some really neat graphics about the movements in that space. These 5 intersections aren't necessarily our highest priorities, but each intersection is a good example of the types of intersections that we have in the city of Kingston. So further on, you'll see we have specific recommendations for these intersections that can also be applied to other similar intersections. So it's a little bit like we tried to pick ones that were sort of good templates. Getting into some of the recommendations, as I mentioned, lots of tools that are in this document. So this is an alternatives toolkit. As many of you may know, there's lots of different options for how you design a streetscape. Bike lanes, bike boulevards. You can do sharrows, which is marking for bicycles on the road. So this is a set of pages within the plan that shows all of those options, and each one has different pros and cons. And there are different members of our community who feel very differently. One of the stakeholders is DPW, for example. And you'll see that there is a rating system. We asked them how they felt about speed humps, for example.
Oh.
So, yeah. Good, maybe bad example. But so as you see, this is a great way to sort of look at all the different options that we can use. So it's a toolkit. Then this gets into the real meat of the plan here. These are some of the recommendations, and it's split into 2 sections. One is intersections and one is corridors. Mm-hmm. And these are not necessarily in priority order, but they are pretty detailed if you look in the plan. And again, each location would have to include further study, but these help us. Well, the consultants are these experts, and they were able to look at them and really give us, I think, feedback on how to improve those intersections, taking examples from all over the country as their inspiration. Each intersection can be improved, and then the corridors can be improved. And this is, to me, I see it as building out a network for walking and biking. So this is about how you move in and out and around the city if you're walking and biking, and how we fill in those gaps so that that's a more safer and pleasurable experience. The consultants also looked at our sidewalks. So for pedestrian accessibility, sidewalks are a big part of that. And they have prioritized this green, yellow, and red set of streets. And they suggest that we start by improving the networks in green because they are the major corridors, and also to create some circles so that you're able to do some walking laps, for example. And then hope if we get that done, eventually we move on to the second and third tier for improvement. Then this, again, the idea that we can design our streets in many different ways. They go through many different options for facility design guidance. So bike lanes, bike routes, curb ramps, wayfinding, street trees. They go into detail about each option, the best practices for each options, when they're appropriate, when they're not. Then they do not just streetscape design, but then they talk about how we should continue transportation education. We should create some maintenance and improvement schedules, do some other kind of add-ons to increase awareness of walking and biking. And then most importantly, funding. So this is a quick list of the different funding opportunities. As you may know, there's quite a bit coming through the national and state government. And so they listed it for us, some opportunities that we should look into. And then finally, the last section is sort of like the immediate next steps. And so they have some lists here of some things that, as I mentioned, Live Well Kingston will be excited to work on. And then some other things that may be additional studies, like a parking analysis study. Enforcement, clearly we would have to partner with other departments, other outside agencies to move on with these activities. But it's lovely to sort of now have a framework and clear next steps of what to do. So I went through that really quickly. I would love to take any questions now. I'm also available anytime. Please email me any questions in the future. I'm happy to talk about it. Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you. Alderman.
Do you, did this go through a formal review by the Complete Streets Committee? I see two members who've been on there.
I will stand to that. It's really a creature of the Complete Streets Advisory Committee. It isn't deeply involved in this development. And in fact, I'm on the advisory committee for this project. Yeah. So they've been deeply involved, I would say. Okay.
Many, I really appreciate that. Many of the members were on the public advisory committee.
Well, that's what I'm asking, if it was formally reviewed. So I get that there's a lot of overlap.
Yeah, I think that there could be another formal sector. Bring it and have.
When they read the drafts all the way up.
Okay.
So.
Made recommendations. Came on there.
Came to the meetings. Incorporated.
Okay, well, as long as both of you are feeling like it was enough viewed by them, I'd be okay. We've had trouble with things not actually going through reviews before. So.
No, it's a good catch, because many times things have gone around them and they haven't been happy about that. But I would say that in this case, they are embedded in this whole adventure. So.
And DPW has been involved and has looked at all this, and they're aware of all of the recommendations and they support.
I would say as much as their time is available. I have, like that toolkit, I brought it, I printed it out for them and left it on their desk because that was the best way to get them to get their feedback on it. So I've invited them to meetings and they've come when they're available.
And to sing on Liz phrases, engaging the stakeholders who are not in favor of these things traditionally has been a change that she's done with this project. And I think it's served well because they've gotten their input and they've been able to sit at the table and say, no, this will not work for us. And I think it's been a really good interchange between those that deliver it and those that are advocates, blind advocates, I guess.
I don't see anybody here exclaiming bicycles are worse than Stalin's Russia. Some of the people.
Can I ask one question?
Yeah.
Our ADA transition plan,
Yeah.
is it offshoot of this or part of this, or where are we with that?
So this helped the ADA transition plan that we did a sidewalk inventory. My understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, that the ADA transition plan is about the city-owned properties and how we make sure that our properties are ADA accessible. This did not include assessing every park, every city hall sidewalk if it is ADA accessible. So therefore, I would not consider it an ADA transition plan. but absolutely the data that we have collected and that is now, I didn't even get to show it, we have a great dashboard through the Ulster County Transportation Department where you can zoom in on each segment and sort of see its rating. These tools will help us continue creating our ADA transition.
So the ADA transition plan will not be a product of this study.
Not entirely, because the scope of the ADA transition plan was larger than I and we realized.
It's a good baseline. I mean, there's no doubt,
Yeah.
but
Oh, and you go ahead.
Sorry.
Oh, in terms of sidewalk accessibility.
Yeah.
Just since I haven't really looked at this yet, does it talk about where sidewalks would be recommended where there are none, and in addition to just how existing sidewalks would be improved?
So it has those 3 tiers of priority. That's a great step. We collected, as a part of this, we collected data for each sidewalk section, not property, but like segment. It talks a little bit about funding opportunities, but I will say that sort of aside to this plan, the Complete Streets Advisory Council has a sidewalk task force that is currently coming up with a white paper to potentially fund sidewalk improvements. The mayor has asked them to work on that. I believe that they're sort of finishing a year-long look at that. I can't speak to what they will decide on, what they'll suggest, but there's adjacent work happening.
Okay, I'm thinking in particular of Lucas Avenue.
Yeah.
Which is a priority corridor, it happens to be in my ward, and there are no sidewalks beyond a certain point. And so I get complaints all the time about the dangers of walking on the shoulder of the road.
And specific, I live right near there. You'll see Lucas Ave, I'm in the airport. You'll see
Yes.
Lucas Ave is one of the sections in it, and they have recommendations for how we might do some improvements. It talks a little bit about bicycle improvements, but absolutely also pedestrian improvements.
Okay, okay, I look forward to reading it.
Yeah, but the sidewalk improvement is a little bit adjacent, so the Complete Streets Advisory Council is digging deeper on that specific
they are.
improvement. Yeah.
Okay. And if I wanted to find out what the status of that was, is that something that you could?
I can absolutely connect you. So I'm the staff liaison for the Complete Streets
Oh, you
Advisory Council. But I'm not the chair and I can't speak for them, but I can absolutely connect you with John Osborne, who's the chair, and Kristen Wilson is the lead for the sidewalk task force.
Okay. Thank you. Sure.
Okay, so education on the bike lanes.
Yeah.
More about that, and the other day by, what is it? It's on Broadway and it's the pedestrian cross lights and all that. Some drivers, they have no idea to stop. So people are walking, press the button, the lights come on for them to actually cross and cars just zooming. What type of education are we gonna have? You know, and how can us in our communities or organizations help to educate our community about those things?
Thank you for that question. So as some of you know, the city did do a transportation education campaign last year, maybe a year and a half now. It was called Be a Road Hero. This council, but a previous version of this council passed, funded it with, I think it was $45,000. We hired a communications expert who helped us come up with that plan, and I have all of the materials. It's on Engage Kingston, by the way. In it was specifically handouts about how to use the Broadway streetscape, and specifically the bike lane. I think that there's lots of opportunities for more communications work about transportation. I think in the next iteration that we should get advice from the Complete Streets Advisory Council, the Ulster County Transportation Council, about what that messaging should be. But we have now I would call it a template or a toolkit for basically, we did an education campaign and I have those working files. If you or the Ulster County Transportation Council decide what campaign we should do next, I can very easily put it in and put it out there. But I think some more work needs to be done from other interested stakeholders. Okay, is that clear? Did I answer your question?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
Yes, I have a couple. Thank you.
There's a lot there. We can talk about that all day.
Any other questions for Emily?
Oh, Brandy found the dashboard. Thank you so much.
Oh, great.
Could you put it, pull the dashboard up so we can see it up here? Yeah, let's see, I can find it by.
There's lots of optimistic things happening about transportation. The governor's office of traffic safety is under renovation, which I think is important. They have some funds typically, and they have traditionally spent them on police enforcement, and they're moving toward an education bent, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
The three things about transportation, it's engineering, what's the problem? Education, let people know about the problem, and then enforcement. So that should be the last thing that happens, so.
For you wonks, I mean that very affectionately if you want to dig deeper, because I also really enjoy this. You can click on a segment and you can see that this segment is deemed less accessible. So there's a standard for how you rate a sidewalk in terms of AD accessibility. And this segment is considered less acceptable. And so we have collected not just each sidewalk segment, but curb ramps. That's part of ADA accessibility, is the ability to get from the sidewalk and cross the street onto the other side of the sidewalk. So there's an immense amount of data here that has been collected.
I've got to chime in again. It's not all about people in wheelchairs. It's about people with strollers. It's about people with, baby carriages. It's about, it's
People who walk slowly.
people who walk slowly. It's about,
Mobility, any type of.
Blind people.
blind people. That's right.
Where did you come up with that? Because the thing I clicked on was the Ulster County Fatal and Serious Injury Dashboard.
How did I come with that? I had a cheat sheet to it.
A favorite button.
It's absolutely, I believe it's on hkingston.com. If you go to pedestrian bicycle master plan, by the way, this whole document for anybody, and I didn't print out the appendix for you, but in the appendix is every public comment that we got.
Oh,
So that's
wow.
all in there. So if someone says, hey, I told them this, is that in there? In the appendix, it should be listed. So there's more content on engagedkingston.com.
What is looking at what Brian's been working on,
The crash
Yeah.
dashboard.
Fatal and Serious Injury Crash Dashboard.
which would be a great, when he's done, is he done?
I can't speak to Brian's.
It's 2019, I think, through 22, no, 17, 12/31/17, 12/31/22. That's the data that covers.
Yeah, great. I know that the Ulster County Planning Department has been working on that for some time, and it will be a useful tool for us. What website is that? Is that a website?
If you just type in Ulster County Transportation, you come to a thing, Traffic Safety Board, and under that, there's a button called Ulster County Fatal and Serious Injury Dashboard.
It's a GIS application of crashes that are recorded at the state level.
And is the sidewalk inventory dashboard that you brought up something that we can access?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and that's through the same portal that.
Not that.
So let me see if I can,
Through Engage Kingston.
yeah, here,
Oh,
let
so
me walk it
Okay.
together, and if we find that I'm incorrect, I can fix it tomorrow. So let's see, so I believe here's Engage Kingston.
Right.
Scroll down a bit. Here's pedestrian bicycle master plan. There's a plug for many other projects, some of which I'm not part of. And I believe Ulster County dashboard. So here's a link to the document. Here's Ulster County dashboard. Here's how you can get to it.
Okay.
And so that's the one that I just showed you on screen, not the one that Rennie
That is referring to.
Yeah, but here's the Ulster County sidewalk inventory.
Okay.
So our data was collected, as you'll see, Ulster County's been working on collecting data in other locations as well. So we sort of combined our data. So our data, they host our data for us, but we have access to it, and it's sort of
Oh, that's great.
bigger.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just because it's so cool, these GIS systems, you'll see as I scroll around, it's giving you updated information on the right here about accessibility.
Very nice.
All that stuff. It's very fancy.
I'm definitely gonna check it out, because I know, like down in Wilbur, there I get a lot of complaints about lack of, the sidewalks, and good to see data wise where we're at. Okay, any other questions for Emily?
I guess my question is, what are you looking for from us tonight?
Up to your process, eventually, but if you adopted it formally, then we can say that you agree with our vision, and then we can continue using it as a tool. Frankly, we're already starting to pick it up and use it for things, but we would love it if you said you agree. And I think that there's a language, a legislation in there for you to consider.
Okay. I mean, I would like to look through this first before I agree to adopt anything since.
All right, well, let me take a motion to go into discussion.
Okay.
So, motion?
Actually, if we do a motion and discussion, then, we would have to table it.
Okay.
Or else it would go straight, we'd have to vote on it, so we could just leave it for old business if we want to review it.
Okay. Okay. Well, I think, I just want to say thank you to everyone in the pack, and it couldn't come at a better time as we grapple with many issues regarding passive transportation and the increased density and driving. It just seems like there's a lot going on our streets and our sidewalks, so it'd be a great way to help get through it.
Thanks for letting me talk.
And thanks for your effort. I mean, 2 years, this is a lot of work, and I look forward to looking into it.
Please let me know.
Contacting me.
Yeah, if you have any questions, please do not hesitate.
Thank you so much.
16th, we have the first bike parade.
Oh, fabulous.
So I'm going to talk about decorating bikes and everything.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah, I suggest everybody look at the series practice.
Yeah.
Because that is really important, because, one of the main things we get is people worried about particular intersections. And I think if more people looked at this, they would, number one, see where the actual issues are, and hopefully that would reduce their worries about places where they only fear something's going to happen.
Or if there are bad situations, people are aware of it and more cognizant of going through those intersections.
It's also how they program jobs. Like crash rate, that's how they program a project. Crash rate is one of the big, let's fix this intersection. It's my crash rate.
Okay.
Okay. That was great. So, all right, so next up is item number 5, the Hudson Area Commission dissolution by Artel Stardust. Here, please come up. It's hiding, eating snacks.
All right, so, as you all know, the city adopted a new zoning code in August, and there's a few cleanup items today that I have for you, and one of them is the Heritage Area Commission. The Heritage Area Commission was first established by this body in 1986. In the new zoning code, the Heritage Area Commission no longer has a role in reviewing site plans or permits or any role at all. And so there's some language in the code, outside of the zoning code itself, that speaks to how the Heritage Area Commission should be established and how it should be run. I am asking the council to remove that language and to formally end the Heritage Area Commission in the city of Kingston. I can speak to many reasons why I think that's a good idea. But first and foremost, I think one of the things that the new zoning code tries to do is to streamline the approvals process. And so by removing a board that I think, a commission that I think is no longer needed, I think that's a good thing. It reduces some of the administrative burden on staff. And I also think some of the things that the Heritage Area Commission did is now within the zoning code itself, in terms of how development should look, what kind of development we want, and so their role would be superfluous in terms of moving forward as a body. So glad to answer any questions.
So when the Heritage Area Commission was set up, what was the original purpose of it?
Yeah.
And
yeah, so the Elisa, if I could have screen sharing privileges, please. So it was actually, Sue Cahill, the planning director, could speak to it, but it was actually first, named the Recreation Commission. And then it changed to the Environmental Conservation Commission at some point, and then became the Heritage Area Commission. The Heritage Program is a program of New York State. And so at a certain point, New York State encouraged municipalities to have these heritage area bodies as part of the general historical preservation movement. And so that's sort of how the Heritage Area Commission came. And I'll just say,
And what is the specific, where is an area of the specific language that appears that you're trying, that you'd like
yeah,
to see?
so I will show
Oh,
that.
you're gonna share, okay.
Yeah, so,
Excellent.
so the heritage area itself, this is the new zoning code. Let me simplify some of this. So the heritage area boundary or the area, it still exists because I think it'll be helpful for future grant applications, and the state, as I mentioned, still encourages, still encouraging the heritage area as a concept. And so this was our heritage area boundary. So previously in the new zoning code, if you wanted to file a building permit and you were located in this area, that the approval of that permit would first have to go through the Heritage Area Commission.
Got it.
And if that building was also included in the historic district, then it would have to go through both the Heritage Area Commission and the historic, the HLBC, the Landmarks Commission. So this is kind of the old boundary. Again, this still exists within our code, but there's no Heritage Area Commission per se. And then the actual code, this is, let's see, chapter in my head. I think it's chapter 22, article 4, Heritage Area Commission, which just speaks to the HAC's establishment, how, its purpose.
And the Landmarks Commission still exists.
Exactly.
So it does its own review in the historic district.
Yes, this has nothing to do with the historic districts or the Landmarks Commission. That is untouched.
And we can still create more heritage areas within the city, even without having a commission. So.
It's largely duplicative.
That's what that's what it sounded like.
And I should, the Heritage Area Commission was fully aware that the new zoning code when passed basically made it moot, and
they were fine with it.
Everyone was fine with it. So
they were the ones running around in bathing suits saying Yahoo.
So what you're proposing is that this entire article be removed?
Exactly.
Okay.
Anybody have any other questions during this one? Because you have two here, right?
Yes.
Well, I'll move that we adopt this resolution.
Okay. All right, so this is a resolution of the common council. All right, let's go into discussion. So we're in any discussion?
Yeah. This is something we've talked about in various ways for a long time. There was some discussion of this actually a couple of years ago. And I think that it's definitely something that makes a lot of sense precisely for streamlining, but because it doesn't add any protections that aren't already present either in the new code or via the HLPC.
Anyone else?
Sounds good.
All right, a call for a vote. All in favor? Any opposition? Okay, passes unanimously.
Okay, so now that you voted that, for that. So my second one is related to the Heritage Area Commission, and this is editing Local Law 4 of 1992. So the city of Kingston participates in New York State's local waterfront revitalization program, the LWRP. As part of that program under New York State, we have to designate a waterfront advisory committee. And I can just show you, this is our, everything in shaded is our LWRP coastal boundary. And so previously, the Heritage Area Commission has had the responsibility of reviewing with basically the Waterfront Advisory Committee. For some reason, that would basically be assuring that any actions occurring within that boundary are consistent with the local waterfront revitalization program coastal boundary. And so this amendment to this local law 4 of 1992 would state that the Heritage Area Commission no longer has this role and that the planning board now has this role as acting as the waterfront advisory committee. We did have some discussion internally about who would be the best body to have this role, and giving the planning board's expertise, already close involvement in planning actions, it makes a lot of sense for the planning board to have this role.
I'm just curious, what we know, the other one, you show the picture. The criteria for deciding that shaded area, is that just due to elevation, or is there some other criteria?
It also is, as I understand it, it's also the view shed. So if you're in the coast or on the boat, what do you see from the water?
So I'm having trouble seeing because I'm blind, but does it come all the way down to the gray in the rock? Okay.
Well, it goes even further.
Yeah, to go.
All the way through.
Does it, to go to the boundary of the city. Okay, great.
And I think the state probably designates the criteria for LWRP districts too.
Department of State.
Yes, yeah.
So looking at the resolution you put up there, so the planning board would appoint a waterfront committee?
The planning board would be.
The waterfront advisory committee, or
Yes.
they would be, because I'm not seeing, yes,
So the edit is waterfront advisory committee.
means the planning board, okay, yeah. Oh, I see, because previously there had been a waterfront advisory committee, which was in fact a heritage area.
Exactly.
Got it,
Yes.
okay, all right.
Not sneaking anything by you tonight.
Just want to be certain.
Yeah, you are.
Very good.
Measure twice, cut once.
Yeah, right, yeah, right.
Okay. Does
Okay,
anybody else have any further questions? Otherwise, I will call for a motion to. Okay. Second?
second,
Okay. All right, any discussion? I'll just say that I'm in favor of this. The more streamlining, the better. I think we just in line with the adoption of the new zoning code, so.
sounds fine by me.
Call for a vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, opposed? No. Passes unanimously. Thank you, Bart.
Nice to see another, right, to streamline and one more community that doesn't have to meet.
Yes.
All right, and we're going to keep you here at the table for item number 6, which is the affordable housing standards payment in lieu of affordability criteria.
Okay, yes.
You might have to go into like a little bit of backstory if we have some new.
I'll give some backstory. So
Thank you.
in the new zoning code adopted in August, each development over 7 units has to provide a certain percentage of affordable or workforce housing. However, there is also an option that that developer, instead of providing that affordable housing, may do a payment in lieu of. And so meaning make a contribution, in this case to an affordable housing fund. I should say that the amount of that, the actual payment amount of that contribution is set in the city's fee schedule. And so will be reviewed annually. We can talk more about that if there's any questions. However, the code is also very clear that in order for a developer to qualify for a payment in lieu option, that developer needs common council approval. This is pretty much the only place within the zoning code that the common council has involvement in the entire code. From making edits, this is the only part where the common council kind of has the narrow say. And the code also says that the common council will adopt standards by which it will judge payment in lieu applications. And so that's why I'm here tonight. I did review a draft of these standards back in June, and did receive some feedback from the committee members that were present. And so this reflects an updated, this is an updated draft. But in summary, I'm proposing that the Common Council look at 5 different criteria for judging whether a payment in lieu request should be granted. Number 1, is that development consistent with other goals or investment initiatives by the city? So I say one of the edits I made is specifically, is it consistent with the city's comprehensive plan and other ongoing planning or housing initiatives? Second, does it offer other community benefits? So maybe it's not providing affordable housing, but the developers say that they're building out a public plaza, or they've made a local hiring commitment, or they're including a new public park as another kind of community benefit. Third is, have they done some community outreach? So have they made a good faith effort to introduce the project to the ward's council member and other community or neighborhood groups? And one of the edits I did make, there was some debate here in June. I did have a line saying that at minimum, they do need to host at least one in-person community meeting. 4 is the neighborhood context. So is the project located in an area that has other affordable housing? And so I did add a line here saying that in making the case, a developer may show that the surrounding area contains maybe rent-stabilized units or other permanently affordable housing units. And finally, feasibility. So has the project developer showed that if I provide these affordable units, this project is going to be infeasible? For instance, the bank has told me you're not going to get me financing. This is a hardship that I would not be able to overcome. Each of these criteria would be scored on from 0 to 3 by the council member. And my recommendation is that the average score should be 10 or more points across the participating members of the common council. So for instance, if I say here, if 5 members of the committee review a developer's proposal, and the average score across the 5 members of the council is 11, I'm recommending that the common council approve the annual payment option. The burden of proof here is going to be on the developer at all times. So, there's some specific examples here, some guidance for the developer in terms of what the council will be looking for, but it's going to be up to the developer to give the burden of proof. Let's see, what else do I want to say here? Oh yes, another change I made is we did have a discussion last time that the council member that represents the ward in which the development is located maybe should have a greater say. And so I do have here that that council member would have a 2 times weighted score, meaning their score will be counted twice towards the final average. And I did also say that my office would be responsible for collecting and summarizing the common council scores. Ideally, each common council member would score. But perhaps more realistic would be that the committee, like this is going to the Laws and Rules Committee, the committee members would be the ones actually doing the scoring. That's all I want to say about this. And there are, for future common councils and also just for as a means of explanation, I did include in here 2 examples that I think would be instructive and in terms
thank you
of
for the
showing the intention of this criteria. Now, one more thing I want to say. Will these ever be used is an open question. We had this whole debate leading up to zoning code about, are we setting our affordable housing requirements at the right level? What's feasible, what's realistic, and so I think those will probably change through time. I'll say so far, we've received a lot of interest in the new zoning code. Everyone that I've spoken to is fine meeting the minimum, and in some cases happy to exceed that minimum. And so no one is requesting the payment in lieu. But perhaps there will be a project in the future that will need a payment in lieu. And the goal of the zoning code is to, when possible, have flexibility. So this is in that spirit, that's the reason. Happy to take any questions. Sorry.
I can't remember. Did we decide what the money would be allocated towards? Like, is it just going to go on that line?
Yeah, so it's going to go in the affordable housing fund.
Okay.
Future, in terms of future expenditures, not exactly. But I imagine, I'm personally learning a lot from the ARPA, from the $4.6 million that I have under ARPA. That includes emergency assistance fund, incentives for developers for affordable housing. So I think there's a lot of good lessons learned there in terms of when a fund has money, but that fund could be used for.
Right.
But because there's no money in there, the common council would be involved in making decisions and approving expenditures.
So there are no guidelines yet
For how the money
would be spent if there is a fund. Okay.
But there's a lot.
But there's a lot.
Yes.
And no money.
Right. But there's the anticipation
Yes.
of funding.
Yes.
And there's the Affordable Housing Fund. Does it receive money in other ways, or is this the only means in which it would actually be funded?
There are potentially other sources of funding. But again, all kind of speculative, including potential cannabis money. But again, there's nothing.
I'm sorry, just thinking of people who are paying for things in cannabis. You want cash or cannabis? It's a little bizarre. I do have a question. So the 2X, the ward person, so suppose there are 5 people who are making the judgment. In essence, there would be 6 people.
That's right.
So if the ward person says 12, there would be another 12 added in.
Exactly.
As opposed to the ward person's having. Okay, good, all right.
So and we really don't see this being used before January anyway, right? Like by the time it passes. Yeah.
And if this is the committee making the decision, what if the board person is not on the committee? Or is the whole council, what's the process?
I mean, I would encourage the committee member to be a participant in that case, if they're not on the committee, but certainly there's nothing to compel them to participate.
Or prevent them.
Or prevent them,
right.
Yes.
And as the director of housing initiatives, you feel that this does not really impact the goal of affordable housing that Kingston has set for itself?
Are we being asked to vote on this today, or is it something that?
You can sit on it, or you can vote on it. It's up to you.
I was reading it this morning and I was like, I wish this was implemented while I was in office because it forces the council, in my eyes, to be more interactive in looking at the legislation and kind of picking it apart based off this, like there's been projects in the past where we passed and some people say no, whatever, but I feel like if this was there, it would have made things a little more clear, not saying that people would have voted differently, but I feel like the discussion would have been maybe a little different with thinking of these criteria. So I think it's great. I think it's great. Thank you for the examples. I think there's a lot of agency that's going to be given to the council.
Move this. I'm like, I want to move this.
Oh, yeah. It's pretty cool.
Good stuff.
How's everybody else feeling? So I'll, if anybody has any more questions, otherwise I'll ask for a motion for discussion. Second. Okay. All right, any discussion? I would just like to say that I really appreciate all the work that you've put into it. I know that during all of the debates and deliberations for the code, I was always really staunchly trying to, get more in affordability and wasn't so sure about this, but I'm feeling a lot better. I feel really great about all the other affordable housing units that we're getting online outside of like larger projects that using the ARPA money. And so I fully support this. So thank you.
I agree. Thank you for your work.
All right, so if no more.
Thank you.
All right, so I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Nope, and so this passes unanimously. Go home and have some snacks.
Bye. Thank you, Emily.
Thank you. Thanks for staying. All right, item number 7 on the agenda, apprenticeship regulations.
All right, so I will start by expressing some disappointment that Carl's not here, because I think he have other things to add. But what I've tried to do in the grid that I kind of found for you is collate at least a lot of the stuff that we have either seen, research that various members have done or heard in various interviews and or testimony before the council. So this is in essence just kind of like a smorgasbord of possibilities here. But I was thinking too that it would be very helpful for us probably to discuss first what the values are that we think are involved in contemplating any changes to the to our apprenticeship regulations. Because I think we've seen a number of conflicting values at play in a lot of the discussion. And I think if we can be clear on what it is we want to get out of this, that's going to make it a lot easier for us to make some decisions down the road. Because you can see just from looking at the threshold, there's a lot of different levels that we've seen. And part of me is just not even sure that any of them make much sense for a variety of reasons. Then under regulations, I will point out one thing. So I've given you in the left-hand column specific individual regulations. Sometimes there were more than one in a particular document. So you'll see in New York State, there were in fact 9 elements of their discussion about what they'd like to see in terms of apprenticeship programs for contractors that they hire. You'll note that none of those have actual thresholds of any significance. You know, it's more about record keeping, things like that. So they don't have a particular monetary threshold, for example. Let's see. And then some of these, if there is no municipality or governmental agency listed in the middle column, that's because that's one of the things that came up during discussions or debate or what have you. And so I left boxes because I'm sure that there were other things other people remember, or there might be things that people saw and considered that aren't represented here. So.
Yeah, I found some other, they're not necessarily New York, but I didn't have time to send them to everybody, but I made copies if you want to see it.
Sure, yeah.
Like there's, a couple
Yeah, so like, well,
from California.
Sarahville, Washington
Yeah.
State ones.
There's also New York State DOT one, which I have in front of me, which is pretty straightforward.
So there's also, they're actually in there, it's a little hidden, but they're towards the bottom, at least the one I have, are different exemptions that people, like Ulster County had, or that somebody mentioned, so.
I'll just hand these out if you want to add them.
Okay. I can do that.
I thought some of, the New Jersey one was interesting just because it about the, if the program hadn't been in existence in a certain amount of time.
Right, yeah, that was one of the ones that one labor union business manager mentioned to me too. So along the same lines of making sure that you don't require this in every different business, because if you've got a business that only just started.
Yeah.
Right, that's.
Right, you're in luck.
Yeah. Then they're entering into a catch-22.
Let me go on just a minute about New York State's DOTs. 5 million, anything above 5 million is what they talk about. And the key parts that I think that are important are, you need a training plan. And each contractor has to have a training coordinator, someone responsible for the apprentice, employed by the contractor. So there's a plan and there's somebody responsible for that plan. So despite the fact that they don't have this other performance criteria, there's a person and a plan in place that has to be followed. But it kicks in at 5 million and then goes up to it. When you get to the big jobs, it's $125 million of contract. One training. But it avoids all that. How do you know?
Right, and what I noticed in ours and in Ulster Counties is something that apparently is not actually available, because we say a graduation rate of at least 30% as determined by the New York State Department of Labor. But if they're not publishing the specific graduation rates, then that's completely moot.
Now, is that true that they're not publishing the graduation rates or just the graduates' names?
I have not been able yet to determine that they will provide the information that we're looking for. So I'm going to keep trying. I've got a couple more numbers to try. So we'll see.
Right, because I think some of what was presented to us at one point mentioned that the graduation percentage was, yeah, we were given some percentages. I think even from airlines and from the union, just not the names.
Is there another copy of the ones that Michelle?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Boardman done that.
Sorry, they the pagination.
Was there other than more than one sheet?
No, it was just 3 different.
Okay. So I guess, what I would appreciate, I think, is a little discussion is the value that we're looking for. What is it that we hope to accomplish by having regulations about apprenticeship program?
Well, I think we want to make sure that apprentices are well-trained and that they understand safety procedures.
But have a meaningful experience. An apprentice, not just a placeholder.
Right.
Not just somebody, right?
Right.
Yeah, I was just thinking it's about building up a, future workforce, in our community and jobs.
Yep.
Financial stability for the future.
Also affirmative action goals. Some unions are some trades are hard to get into. Another collection.
Yeah, there was one I saw where that was actually a requirement.
Was it Rochester?
I think
Yeah.
so. So, but that would be one of those things we would definitely want to talk with people who've done these things.
Yeah.
If there's a question, you want to be comfortable in a place that doesn't have many people in the groups that would be designated. Be setting up another limit that would make it difficult to be actually worked on.
So one thing I was thinking, is there a way to actually have a conversation with both sides? Because we are looking for like merit-based advancement. We want to know that apprentices are working toward, every day being better. And how are they doing it? Both sides. You don't need to be part of the union. You can be open shop and still advance. Is there a way that we can work both sides and understanding the work that the apprentices are putting into themselves? And I don't know, is there a way that, we can do that? So we can promote, culture of progression and skills and performances, because that's what we're looking for at the end of the day. We want to know that, we're working with the best of the best. And then I go back to, we talk a lot about saving money, but if we have a local organization that the number is a number, are we trying to save money or is it about safety? And putting in the time and effort into themselves and the building and infrastructure.
Yeah, I don't think it's about saving money. I
personally don't think it's about saving money. I think it's about having the best.
Yeah. The argument they give you, the argument that some put forward is that having an apprentice is less costly than having a journeyman because you pay them a lower hourly rate. But at the end of the day, the cost of training needs to get added in there somewhere. So I don't think there's a significant savings to it.
I think it's a
public benefit is not right.
Yeah, to have the best people on the job because we all benefit from that.
But in terms of the money that we spend on contracts, I don't think that's the place to think about where we would put our emphasis on ensuring safety, ensuring good quality apprentices. If it comes to that, then it seems like we would be much better off to actually directly fund apprenticeship programs.
Which is what DOT does. I mean, DOT, for every $5 million job, for example, you are required to have 2 apprentices and they pay for them. Separately. They have a separate pay item. And you have to have a training coordinator, you have to have a plan, and you have to, somebody watches it and make sure that there's an affirmative action piece of it. It's a well thought out. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't even have to be a Department of Labor approved. It can be an FHWA on-job training approved program. I mean, but you've got to have somebody who is responsible for the apprentice.
But we're not trying to get to that business.
No, I don't think so. No.
They got in the business. We got in the business when we were doing that DOT because we wanted apprentices, so we were willing to spend the money.
But isn't the Department of Labor already doing that? I mean,
They don't monitor individual apprentices. They monitor programs.
Right, they monitor programs, but, right, so if they monitor the program, if it's a good program and it meets their standards in terms of the number of hours that someone is trained, then I guess we're assuming that means that the apprentice that graduates from that program has the skills that are required.
Right.
So are there numbers for graduates for the ones that are
For the
paying?
DOT?
Yeah.
Well, they don't keep track of how many they've done, that I'm aware of over the years, but they do keep track of the projects and apprentices. And, one of the issues is with a $5 million project, it's going to be long enough to have an apprentice have a meaningful experience.
The
A
hours.
$100,000 project is going to be done in a couple of months. You're not going to get, you're not going to get any graduates or any, you'll get some experience, but small jobs are just not going to really benefit the apprentice much.
Right, that's right.
Yeah, that
They're
makes
not going
sense.
to be that.
Do we converse about what each side wants.
Well, the idea was, for our general plan that we've discussed, is that we would look through this first, think about our values, go through, see if there's particular regulations that we'd like, because we don't have to do anything. We could just leave stuff where it is right now. That would be one possibility. Another possibility is, we go through, we pick the items that we think would make the most sense, so we could adopt this. We could also just adopt the exemptions that Ulster County has, leave it at that. And then once we've done some of our thinking through, then we approach both sides. And we say, can you review this and tell us what pitfalls you see, what advantages you see? So we get feedback from them, right? So that was the general idea.
So what I'm saying through the vote, what one side is looking for is like the ultimate education. We want those that apprentice it, we want them to be pretty much the best if they're gonna do this work. Then we have inclusivity. That's what another side I feel that is looking for. And I say yes to all of it. How can we all win and get what we need on both sides? Because I think both sides have their own profession, right? I'm sure that there's, when we're talking about, each side, there's something that they all focus on, that they're all professions, and they all have profession.
Yeah, well, so the mistake we made before was we didn't actually ask either side about what the advantages and disadvantages might be of the change that we made. And so that's what we would be not doing. We would be avoiding that this time because we know who to talk to. We can give them the various ideas we're looking at, so we get their feedback. And then we go from there to decide, we've articulated what I counted 5 values that would be important to us. Do we hit all 5 of those, or do we hit at least 4 with the feedback we get from the 2 sides? So I think that the next step is, so at next month's laws and rules, that's where we would decide. We can look at all the different plans we've got now. We've got a lot of material to look at. And that's where we would hash out any specific changes we would want to make to our current apprenticeship requirements. After that, once we come up with that list, we then engage with the open shop folks, the union folks, get their feedback. So if they're fine with everything we say, good. We can go straight into some regulation or
changing.
Regulation.
We've had an apprenticeship requirement in the city of Kingston since 2004. This is not new.
Yeah.
We tweaked it in 2012, and they tweaked it in 2022. So, it's not new stuff. It's just around the edges of it.
Well, I think it was $1 million, right, before, and they brought it down.
It was $1
in
million.
12, yeah.
Well, first it was $1 million.
$1 million initially?
No, in 2004, it was dropped from, no, 04 was $1
In
million.
2012, it went
to
dropped from
100,000.
$1 million, yeah, to 100,000.
Right.
Before that, it was like
Million, right. In Ulster County, it's about 750.
Right.
And then I spoke with them about how they came up with that number. And they said that they looked back at all of the contracts that they did, and then it came up, based on
Yeah, I was
the value of the contracts, they came up with a number that seemed to be the reasonable number.
That might be great also for us.
Bear in mind, another piece of this, and it's evident in the Ulster County legislation. We can only do this, and that's something we have to change in our law. We can only do this for projects that are city funded.
Right, that's right.
Our law doesn't permit that now. Our law is all projects led by the city. So if there's a federally funded project and the city lets it, and that's the way it's done, the city lets the contract, we can't do this. They will not permit this. Neither will the state.
So that
The state may require their
Right.
apprenticeship program, but ours, you can't do this stuff when it's not our money.
So that should be amended, I mean, so we should.
We
amend the
should, that, so it's one thing that has to
Yeah,
happen.
yeah.
We have to say, we have to have an exclusion for money that's not ours.
So
You know.
there are fewer jobs, right?
There are fewer
Yeah, yeah.
jobs, right?
That
Right.
is what it really.
Fewer big jobs. You know, most of the big jobs come with outside funding. And we can't put this requirement on an outside funded job.
Because they have their own requirements.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah.
And we can't tweak those requirements.
Not theirs, no.
No, when you sign a contract, you're
And it's,
beholden
you
to
know,
their,
to give the city credit, and the regional director of transportation told me this when I signed a week ago. The city of Kingston has done an amazingly good job at delivering federally funded projects. So they, you know, we've figured out, and they weren't always great at it, but he told me that we're the poster child for being able to deliver these jobs correctly. So, you know.
using the grant funding and.
Using the grant funding, using federal funds, using the process that the feds require, the process that the state requires, which are not easy processes.
No, no, no.
And he says we've done a great job. So
That's good.
I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah.
But, I mean, you know, they don't allow you to mess around with their general clauses or their.
Right, but without that understanding, there was a narrative that, people were going to be
Right.
shut out of
Right.
but it wouldn't be, so.
Well, the city funded projects or something, right? And that's what we're talking about, city funded projects.
I don't think that was clear to.
Right.
No, I don't think it was. either.
And so that, something like that might actually then militate toward us keeping a very low number. $100,000 instead of a higher number. So that, because that's the only place where we've got any traction.
Right.
The city funded projects, because most of our projects are going to be at that lower end, not upper.
But then we get into the whole meaningful experience thing. $100,000 project is 2 months' work. Is an apprentice gonna, how does that help an apprentice? I mean, it helps a little bit. But, it isn't gonna deliver a graduate.
But maybe that number is too low.
Well, but wouldn't they move to different projects?
I would assume that they would, yeah. Hope that they would. Yeah. So it's, yeah.
And I guess, it's a little bit separate, but the project labor agreement, that has to be open to everybody, correct? No
Project
matter the
labor agreements
source.
are a very interesting conversation. Yes, they are open to every.
Yeah.
However, they're more difficult for an open shop to engage in.
Mhm.
It pushes them into a relationship with the union, typically. And some are happy to do it, some don't like project labor agreements. I'm an advocate for them for large jobs. I think it helps with your schedule.
Oh, yeah.
It helps with your.
Breaks and, yeah.
For example, Dean Stadium has a project labor agreement, and I think that's one of the reasons that I'm more confident that they'll make the schedule necessary to not screw up next year's school year. But.
You gonna quote him on that?
Jesus, screw up word. Put at jeopardize, maybe it's gonna.
What did you mean when you said that project labor agreements would push an open shop toward a relationship with unions?
Most project labor agreements are negotiated between the labor force and the owner, and the contractor as a third party. So you need to have somebody representing the labor force, and typically that's the AU or multiple unions. Typically, it's a consortium of unions, somebody that, like the Construction Industry Council, which has agreements with a number of unions and a number of contractors. They're like a broker, okay? So they can make agreements about no strike, make schedules.
Right, like each operation union could have like different times for start and end and lunch, and then you can have chaos.
Right, and negotiations are trying to put work rules, because we're bound to pay prevailing wage. That's a state law, and that's fine. So we're paying, in essence, the union wage to everybody. But work rules are where things get to.
And who determines when a project labor agreement needs to be?
The process, you do a study, okay, you do a study, and the study looks at, things like availability of labor, where the labor agreements are, is it already going to expire during the project, schedule for the project. So the study looks at whether there are savings that can be realized by a project labor agreement. And if the study shows that there are savings, then it's a prudent thing to enter into it. If the study shows that there shouldn't be any savings, then you don't.
And what entity does that study?
Consultants that are in that business.
Right, so with the city, does the city then, like, so.
When we did the project labor agreement for Pete Stadium, we used a consultant called Race Associates, who does a lot of this in New York. There's others that do it, but he was the one that did this.
So on jobs over a certain amount, is that usually when the city would?
For the state of New York, for example, the DOT, for jobs over 10 million, you must do the study. 10 million. So, that would have fallen into the category of one you should do the study on because it's 27 million. The Ward Street Bridge has a project labor agreement, which, but that's a whole separate thing, really, from this. And the project labor agreement will include things like apprentice.
That's what I'm saying, it doesn't include that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And those are typically on the larger scale projects.
Right. Right, doesn't pay to do them typically for.
Take longer to negotiate it, and the whole project would probably take. Right.
Good, so, with y'all's permission, I will then include then the values we discussed. We can flesh it out more if we want to. And then, if I got yours, if you would share with me the DOT one, I will put that in.
I think it worked. Could you read could you read our principles?
Will you send those around to us?
Yeah, I'll add to this.
Oh, you're gonna add it to
and
it.
then, I'll add another section and then include whatever ones we've got, so we'll have this to look at for the next.
Right, and then I had already sent around something to people, which you incorporated into your.
I incorporated
grid,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, so the 5 values we said were well-trained apprentices, meaningful experience as an apprentice, i.e. not just a placeholder, safety, that is ensuring safe practices, developing the workforce, and affirmative action. It's really fun. It's very important.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
We'll put it around the circle. We'll make a pie.
That's right, so you can spin it and see what you're going to do.
All right.
How long do you consider a joint apprenticeship program? Yeah, we have to consider something like the joint program, like creating apprenticeships where both sides can work together on the project. You ever heard of this?
Well, I other than project labor, I believe that open shops that say don't even participate in merit actually buy into the union apprenticeship program.
I think they can.
Yeah.
Is there a way for us to require both sides on different projects to work together?
No,
Well, if they get the bid, because you gotta get the bid, yeah.
No, when you
Yeah,
put out a
the table
request for
first.
bids, you can't require who, the RFP doesn't, it's open to anyone to apply. You can't, I don't think you can make a requirement of who applies.
Two best, most bids,
Lowest
have them
responsible, yeah.
work together.
Most communities.
That's not the thing.
The law is we must take the lowest responsible bidder.
But the
That's
emphasis
it.
also on
That's
responsible.
right.
That's in their finance. Lowest responsible bidder, period.
That's it.
That's what we need.
Yeah.
That's the need, but they don't.
That's right. That's a question. That's requirement.
They did it.
You can't do it.
Somebody doesn't get a sheet.
That's like saying to everybody, okay, everybody get along. No more wars, everybody get along.
Hey, if you're gonna take a flight, like, do you want the cheapest
Next.
flight, or you want the, right, like
You want something
a,
that's-
yeah, and it has like, it's safe, right?
Okay, but that's when you
That's the
get,
balance.
okay, when you do a professional acquisition, okay, like professional services, then you can negotiate and go for the most qualified, not the cheapest. And the, and you have to, there's a process for that. And the argument is, that would like, is the dentist argument. Yeah, you're gonna go to the cheapest dentist, you're gonna go to the one that's gonna do it right, you know?
You're gonna go to the cheapest one who does it right.
That's the goal.
That's the goal. That is the goal.
Not the one who is charged with murder.
Right. I don't know about that. I don't know anything about that.
Like my wife.
Yeah, he apparently had great hands, somebody told me. When he used to go there.
You don't know about this? Are we
Wait, no.
adjourned? Is we adjourned?
No.
Maybe we should adjourn.
Are we?
After we adjourn, I'll tell you.
Okay. All right, what time is it? The clock is behind me, so I have no idea. Really? That's all?
Wait, this right here, this is.
All right, so like take a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Motion.
Okay.
We have to sign it before we. We didn't get a vote.
I think we have them all.
Good night.
Good night, Lisa.
Have a good night.